Jamal was a 9-year-old boy who had learned to find beauty in a world that often seemed indifferent to him. An orphan living in a rundown neighborhood, Jamal had little to his name, but his quick mind and boundless spirit. He spent most of his days roaming the city's iconic bridges, enchanted by their openness and the life that coursed through them. The bridges were his escape from the harshness of his reality. He loved to watch the sleek luxury cars speeding by, their polished exteriors glinting in the sunlight. In his imagination, each car carried stories of a life he longed to live, one filled with freedom, success, and adventure. Jamal would sit on the edge of the bridges, feeling the wind rush past him, dreaming of a day when he, too, might have a chance to touch that world. Despite his circumstances, Jamal was no stranger to hard work and resilience. His days were often spent scavenging for odd jobs to earn a little money for food. He was known in his neighborhood for his wide grin and determination, even when the odds were stacked against him. The bridges gave him a sense of hope, a reminder that the world was vast and full of possibilities beyond the struggles he faced daily. One particularly breezy evening, Jamal made his way to his favorite bridge, the largest and busiest in the city. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the hum of traffic filled the air. Jamal perched on the railing, his legs dangling, as he admired the spectacle of lights and movement below. Little did Jamal know, his life was about to change forever. That very bridge, with its promise of dreams and escape, would soon become the stage for a life-altering encounter, one that would take him from the edge of despair to a destiny he could have never imagined. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the bridge. Jamal was lost in his thoughts, imagining what it might feel like to sit in one of the sleek cars that zipped past him. His mind painted vivid pictures of leather seats, polished dashboards, and the hum of powerful engines. For a moment, he let himself dream of a life far removed from the crumbling apartment he called home. As the evening traffic began to pick up, Jamal noticed something unusual. A convoy of luxury cars appeared at the far end of the bridge, their dark windows gleaming like obsidian under the fading light. The lead car, a sleek black BMW, was unlike anything Jamal had ever seen in person. Its elegance and power seemed to demand attention, and Jamal, like everyone else on the bridge, couldn't help but stare. The convoy came to an unexpected halt a few meters away from where Jamal sat. The noise of the engine softened, and the world seemed to pause. A few pedestrians stopped to gawk, curious about the scene unfolding before them. The doors of the BMW opened smoothly, and out stepped a man dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. His presence was commanding, yet there was an ease about him, as if he belonged everywhere and nowhere all at once. Jamal's heart skipped a beat as he realized who it was: Keanu Reeves. He had seen the actor's face on movie posters and in the occasional television clip that played in the small shop near his neighborhood. To see him in person, standing just a few feet away, felt surreal. Keanu walked toward the railing, seemingly captivated by the view. The city lights shimmered like stars reflected in a river, and the breeze tugged gently at his dark hair. Jamal watched as the actor leaned over the edge, perhaps trying to take in the immensity of the scene below. It was then that Jamal noticed something troubling. The actor's stance wasn't steady. Keanu seemed lost in thought, oblivious to how precariously close he was to the edge. Jamal's instincts kicked in. He moved closer, staying low to avoid drawing attention. His keen eyes caught the slight wobble in Keanu's footing as a sudden gust of wind swept across the bridge. And then it happened. Keanu's polished shoe slipped against the metal grating, and he pitched forward. His hands shot out, grasping at air, as his body tilted dangerously over the edge. The world seemed to slow, the sounds of traffic fading into a deafening silence. Jamal felt his breath catch in his throat. Without thinking, the boy sprang into action. His small, nimble frame darted forward as Keanu's body tipped further toward the abyss. Jamal reached out and grabbed hold of the man's arm just as he began to fall. The momentum nearly pulled Jamal over the edge as well, but the boy planted his feet firmly, gritting his teeth against the strain. His arms burned with effort, but he refused to let go. Keanu's eyes met Jamal's, wide with shock and fear. "Hold on," Jamal yelled, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Using every ounce of strength he had, he pulled. The grating under his sneakers scraped against the metal. Wait! If you're enjoying this empowering story, take a moment to comment, "Empower?" Share your thoughts and let us know what inspired you. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more amazing stories. But Jamal held his ground, inching Keanu back towards safety. A few passers-by rushed over to help, but Jamal had already done the hardest part. With one final tug, Keanu was back on solid ground, collapsing to his knees as he caught his breath. Jamal fell beside him, his small chest heaving as he tried to steady his own breathing. Keanu looked at the boy in disbelief, his voice shaky. You saved me." Jamal managed a small grin, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Guess I couldn't let you fall. Who else is gonna drive that fancy car of yours?" The crowd that had gathered erupted into murmurs of amazement. Jamal, despite his worn clothes and scuffed sneakers, had done what no one else could in that moment. He had saved a life. For Jamal, it was just another act of survival, but for Keanu, it was something far more profound. The actor looked at the boy with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity, silently vowing to repay the courage and selflessness he had just witnessed. Jamal had no way of knowing that this single moment, this split-second decision, would set into motion events that would change his life forever. For now, all he knew was the rush of the wind, the ache in his arms, and the odd feeling that his world had just shifted in a way he couldn't quite explain. The crowd slowly dispersed, their hushed conversations still filled with awe at what had just transpired. The sleek black BMW remained parked, its presence a stark contrast to the rusted vehicles and crumbling buildings visible in the distance. Keanu Reeves sat on the curb of the bridge, his usually composed demeanor replaced by an unmistakable vulnerability. Jamal stood nearby, his small frame silhouetted against the glow of the streetlights. He was unsure of what to do or say, his mind still replaying the harrowing rescue. Keanu, still catching his breath, finally broke the silence. "What's your name, kid?" "Jamal," the boy replied, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. "Just Jamal." Keanu nodded, his sharp features softening as he looked at the boy who had risked everything to save him. "Jamal, I owe you my life. That was brave." "No, it was more than brave. It was incredible." Jamal shrugged, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Guess I'm just good at holding on. You shouldn't lean so far next time." The casual remark made Keanu laugh, a deep and genuine sound that seemed to ease the tension. "Noted," he said, a faint smile curving his lips. But beneath his gratitude, Keanu couldn't ignore the state of the boy standing before him. Jamal's clothes were threadbare, his sneakers worn to the point of falling apart. There was a quiet resilience in his eyes, but also a weight that no child should carry. Jamal turned his gaze to the BMW, unable to hide his curiosity. "That your car?" Keanu followed his line of sight and nodded. "Yeah, she's a beauty, isn't she?" Jamal grinned. "She's not just a car, she's like a spaceship. Bet she's faster than anything on this bridge." "She is," Keanu admitted, chuckling. "You like cars?" "Love 'em," Jamal said with enthusiasm, his face lighting up for the first time that evening. "Sometimes I come up here just to watch them go by. They're like a glimpse of another world." Keanu leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What kind of world, Jamal?" The boy hesitated, unsure if he should reveal the dreams he kept so closely guarded. "A world where you don't have to worry about where your next meal's coming from. A world where you can just go. No limits, no worries." The actor's expression grew thoughtful. He had spent his life surrounded by wealth and privilege, yet here was a child who saw luxury not as an end, but as a doorway to freedom. It was humbling. Keanu's security team approached, their polished shoes clicking against the pavement. "Mr. Reeves," one of them said, "we should get going. Are you all right?" Keanu stood, brushing off his suit. "I'm fine, thanks to Jamal here." He turned to the boy and knelt slightly to meet him at eye level. "Where are your parents?" Jamal shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the ground. "I don't have any. Just me out here." The words hit Keanu harder than he expected. This boy, so young yet so strong, had no one to look after him. It was a reality Keanu could scarcely imagine. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, handing it to Jamal. Here, that's my assistant's number. If you ever need anything at all, you call, okay? Jamal took the card carefully, as though it were made of gold. Thanks, Mr. Reeves. Keanu smiled and patted the boy's shoulder. It's Keanu, and don't lose that card, it's important. The BMW's engine roared to life, and as Keanu climbed inside, he looked back at Jamal through the tinted window. There was something about the boy, something that stirred a deep sense of responsibility in him. Keanu didn't believe in coincidences. This meeting, this moment, it felt like it was meant to happen. Jamal watched as the convoy disappeared into the night, the sound of the engines fading into the distance. He looked down at the card in his hand, its bold black letters gleaming under the streetlight. For the first time in a long while, hope sparked in his chest. Maybe this was the beginning of something different, something better. That night, as Jamal walked back to the small, abandoned building he called home, he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. He had saved one of the most famous men in the world, and now he held a card that could connect him to a life he had only ever dreamed of. Lying on his makeshift bed, Jamal stared at the card, his fingers tracing its edges. He couldn't shake the feeling that the bridge, his bridge, had given him more than just a breathtaking view tonight. It had given him a chance. What he didn't know was that this chance was already in motion, speeding toward him like one of the luxury cars he admired so much. By morning, his life would never be the same. The morning sun streamed through the broken windows of the abandoned building that Jamal called home. The rays illuminated the small, cluttered space, a makeshift shelter cobbled together with discarded materials, and the little Jamal had scavenged over the years. Despite its condition, this place had always been his refuge, a sanctuary from the bustling, unforgiving world outside. Jamal stretched on his tattered mattress, the events of the previous night replaying in his mind. It almost felt like a dream, saving Keanu Reeves, holding on to that life-saving grip on the bridge's edge, and the card now tucked safely in his pocket. He pulled it out, staring at the sleek black lettering. It felt surreal, like he was holding a key to another world. Before he could dwell too much on the possibilities, a sound caught his attention. It wasn't the usual noise of the neighborhood, no distant arguments or clattering of scavengers searching through trash. Instead, it was the low, unmistakable hum of engines. Not just any engines, but the kind Jamal had come to recognize as belonging to luxury cars. He scrambled to the window, peeking through a crack in the boards. What he saw left him breathless. A line of sleek black vehicles was parked just outside his building. At the front was the same BMW from last night, its polished surface gleaming in the sunlight. Behind it were two other luxury cars, equally imposing and out of place in his rundown neighborhood. The sight drew the attention of neighbors, who whispered and pointed from their doorways, astonished at the spectacle. Jamal's heart raced as he heard heavy footsteps approaching the building. His first instinct was to hide. After all, visitors of this sort didn't come to places like this. But before he could move, there was a polite yet firm knock on the door. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. Standing there was Keanu Reeves, dressed more casually than the night before, but still exuding the effortless charisma that had made him a global icon. Behind him stood a small entourage of assistants and security personnel, their expressions neutral but professional. "Morning, Jamal," Keanu said, his tone warm and familiar, as though they had known each other for years. Jamal blinked, unsure how to respond. Morning, Mr. Reeves. What are you doing here?" Keanu smiled, glancing around the dilapidated surroundings. "I told you last night I owed you my life. I wasn't kidding." Jamal stepped back, allowing the actor and his entourage to enter. The interior of the building was modest, almost embarrassingly so, but Keanu didn't seem fazed. He looked around with genuine interest, his eyes taking in every detail. "You live here?" he asked gently, his voice free of judgment, but heavy with concern. Jamal nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's mine." Keanu crouched to meet Jamal's eye level, his expression serious. Jamal, no kid should have to live like this. Last night, you risked your life for me, and I'm not going to forget that. I came here to do something about it. Jamal's eyes widened. What do you mean? Keanu motioned to one of his assistants, who stepped forward holding a thick envelope. Inside this, Keanu explained, are adoption papers. If you're willing, Jamal, I want to give you a home. A real one. Somewhere safe where you don't have to worry about your next meal or where you'll sleep at night. The room seemed to tilt, and Jamal felt his knees go weak. He couldn't process what he was hearing. Adoption? A home? A life outside these crumbling walls? He stammered, unsure what to say. You want to adopt me? Keanu nodded. I do. But it's your choice, Jamal. I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to give you the opportunities you deserve. Tears welled up in Jamal's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. Why would you do this for me? I'm just some kid from the streets. Keanu placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, his grip firm but comforting. Because you're not just some kid. Wait. If you're enjoying this empowering story, take a moment to comment "Empower." Share your thoughts and let us know what inspired you. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more amazing stories. You're brave, smart, and you have a good heart. You didn't hesitate to save me, even when it put you in danger. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Jamal looked down at the envelope, his hands trembling as he took it. Inside were documents that represented a future he had never dared to imagine. He felt a swirl of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, fear, and hope all mingling together. What if I mess it up? He whispered. Keanu smiled, his voice steady and reassuring. You won't. And even if things get tough, we'll figure it out together. That's what family does. The word family hit Jamal like a wave, breaking down walls he hadn't realized he'd built. For so long, he had been on his own, fighting to survive. The idea of having someone to rely on, someone who cared, was almost too much to comprehend. Okay, he said finally, his voice barely audible. I'll do it. Keanu's smile widened, and he pulled Jamal into a gentle hug. You've got a big heart, kid. I'm glad it's you. Outside, the neighbors watched in awe as the entourage escorted Jamal and Keanu to the waiting cars. As Jamal slid into the plush leather seat of the BMW, he couldn't help but feel like he had stepped into a dream. The soft hum of the engine, the scent of luxury, and the presence of someone who truly cared. It was all overwhelming. As the car pulled away from the only home he had ever known, Jamal looked back one last time. The crumbling building grew smaller in the distance, replaced by the promise of something new, something better. For the first time in his life, Jamal wasn't just surviving, he was starting to live. The morning sun streamed through the broken windows of the abandoned building that Jamal called home. The rays illuminated the small, cluttered space, a makeshift shelter cobbled together with discarded materials, and the little Jamal had scavenged over the years. Despite its condition, this place had always been his refuge, a sanctuary from the bustling, unforgiving world outside. Jamal stretched on his tattered mattress, the events of the previous night replaying in his mind. It almost felt like a dream. Saving Keanu Reeves, holding on to that life-saving grip on the bridge's edge, and the card now tucked safely in his pocket. He pulled it out, staring at the sleek black lettering. It felt surreal, like he was holding a key to another world. Before he could dwell too much on the possibilities, a sound caught his attention. It wasn't the usual noise of the neighborhood, no distant arguments or clattering of scavengers searching through trash. Instead, it was the low, unmistakable hum of engines. Not just any engines, but the kind Jamal had come to recognize as belonging to luxury cars. He scrambled to the window, peeking through a crack in the boards. What he saw left him breathless. A line of sleek black vehicles was parked just outside his building. At the front was the same BMW from last night, its polished surface gleaming in the sunlight. Behind it were two other luxury cars, equally imposing and out of place in his rundown neighborhood. The sight drew the attention of neighbors who whispered and pointed from their doorways, astonished at the spectacle. Jamal's heart raced as he heard heavy footsteps approaching the building. His first instinct was to hide. After all, visitors of this sort didn't come to places like this. But before he could move, there was a polite yet firm knock on the door. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. Standing there was Keanu Reeves, dressed more casually than the night before, but still exuding the effortless charisma that had made him a global icon. Behind him stood a small entourage of assistants and security personnel, their expressions neutral but professional. "Morning, Jamal," Keanu said, his tone warm and familiar, as though they had known each other for years. Jamal blinked, unsure how to respond. Morning, Mr. Reeves." What are you doing here?" Keanu smiled, glancing around the dilapidated surroundings. "I told you last night I owed you my life. I wasn't kidding." Jamal stepped back, allowing the actor and his entourage to enter. The interior of the building was modest, almost embarrassingly so, but Keanu didn't seem fazed. He looked around with genuine interest, his eyes taking in every detail. "You live here?" he asked gently, his voice free of judgment, but heavy with concern. Jamal nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's mine." Keanu crouched to meet Jamal's eye level, his expression serious. "Jamal, no kid should have to live like this. Last night, you risked your life for me, and I'm not going to forget that. I came here to do something about it." Jamal's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Keanu motioned to one of his assistants, who stepped forward holding a thick envelope. "Inside this," Keanu explained, "are adoption papers. If you're willing, Jamal, I want to give you a home, a real one, somewhere safe, where you don't have to worry about your next meal or where you'll sleep at night." The room seemed to tilt, and Jamal felt his knees go weak. He couldn't process what he was hearing. Adoption? A home? A life outside these crumbling walls? He stammered, unsure what to say. "You want to adopt me?" Keanu nodded. "I do. But it's your choice, Jamal. I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to give you the opportunities you deserve." Tears welled up in Jamal's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. "Why would you do this for me? I'm just some kid from the streets." Keanu placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, his grip firm but comforting. "Because you're not just some kid. You're brave, smart, and you have a good heart. You didn't hesitate to save me, even when it put you in danger. That tells me everything I need to know about you." Jamal looked down at the envelope, his hands trembling as he took it. Inside were documents that represented a future he had never dared to imagine. He felt a swirl of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, fear, and hope all mingling together. What if I mess it up?" he whispered. Keanu smiled, his voice steady and reassuring. "You won't, and even if things get tough, we'll figure it out together. That's what family does." The word family hit Jamal like a wave, breaking down walls he hadn't realized he'd built. For so long he had been on his own, fighting to survive. The idea of having someone to rely on, someone who cared, was almost too much to comprehend. "Okay," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "I'll do it." Keanu's smile widened, and he pulled Jamal into a gentle hug. "You've got a big heart, kid. I'm glad it's you." The drive away from Jamal's old neighborhood felt surreal. The black BMW's interior was unlike anything Jamal had ever seen. Soft leather seats, ambient lighting, and the faint scent of something clean and expensive. He sat stiffly, unsure of how to relax in a space that seemed almost too perfect for someone like him. Keanu sat beside him, noticing the boy's nervousness. "You okay, Jamal?" Keanu asked, his tone warm and patient. Jamal nodded quickly, his fingers gripping the edge of his seat. "Yeah, just never been in a car like this before. Feels weird." Keanu chuckled. "You'll get used to it. But remember, it's not the car that matters. It's the people in it. And right now, this car belongs to you just as much as it belongs to me." Jamal blinked at him, unsure how to respond. He had spent so much of his life feeling like an outsider that the idea of belonging anywhere, let alone in this world of luxury, felt foreign. The convoy drove through parts of the city Jamal had never visited. The streets were cleaner, the buildings taller and more polished. Jamal stared out the window, watching as people in expensive suits and stylish outfits moved with purpose. It was like stepping into a different universe. Eventually, the cars pulled up to a towering building with sleek glass windows that reflected the sunlight like a mirror. The doorman, dressed in a crisp uniform, opened the car door for Jamal, offering a polite smile. Jamal hesitated, unsure if he was supposed to say something. Keanu stepped out first and extended a hand to him. "Come on," Keanu said. "Let's show you your new home." Jamal took his hand and stepped out, feeling the stares of passers-by. He wanted to shrink away, but Keanu's presence was steady and reassuring. They walked into the building's grand lobby, where the marble floors gleamed, and a massive chandelier hung from the ceiling. Jamal felt out of place in his worn sneakers and patched-up clothes, but no one said a word about it. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quiet, the hum of the machinery filling the silence. When the doors opened, Jamal's jaw dropped. The penthouse was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was sleek and modern, yet it felt inviting rather than cold. A large open space led to a kitchen that gleamed with stainless steel appliances, and a spiral staircase wound up to what Jamal assumed was the second level. "This is your home now, Jamal," Keanu said, stepping aside to let the boy explore. "Take your time, look around." Jamal wandered cautiously, his fingers brushing against the smooth surfaces of tables and counters. He stopped at the window, staring out at the view. The city stretched out before him, a maze of lights and buildings that seemed to go on forever. "This is where you live?" Jamal asked, his voice filled with awe. Keanu nodded. "It's where we live now. You don't have to stay here forever if you don't want to. But for now, it's a safe place to start." Jamal turned to him, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "This is too much. I don't deserve all this." Keanu knelt down to meet Jamal's eye level, his expression serious. "Listen to me, Jamal. You deserve every bit of this, not because of what you did for me last night, though that was incredible, but because you're a kid with so much potential. All I'm doing is giving you the tools to reach it." The sincerity in Keanu's voice made Jamal's throat tighten. For so long, he had been told, either directly or indirectly, that he wasn't worth much. Hearing someone speak to him like this, like he mattered, was almost too much to process. Over the next few hours, Keanu showed Jamal around the penthouse. There was a bedroom waiting for him, complete with a bed that felt like a cloud, and a closet already stocked with new clothes. The kitchen was filled with more food than Jamal had seen in his entire life, and there was even a small library filled with books and games. As the day went on, Jamal began to relax, the initial shock giving way to curiosity and excitement. He tried on new clothes, his small frame swimming in some of the larger pieces. Keanu laughed and helped him find items that fit better, making the experience fun rather than overwhelming. That evening, they sat down to dinner at a long table overlooking the city. The food was unlike anything Jamal had ever tasted, rich and flavorful, with ingredients he couldn't even name. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, while Keanu asked him about his life. Jamal shared bits and pieces of his story, how he had been on his own for as long as he could remember, how he loved watching the bridges and the cars, and how he had always dreamed of something more. Keanu listened intently, his face a mix of sadness and admiration. "You've been through a lot," Keanu said finally, "but you made it, and now you're going to thrive." Jamal nodded, his heart swelling with a mixture of emotions. For the first time in his life, he felt like someone truly cared about him, not out of pity, but because they saw his worth. As the night fell and the city lights sparkled outside, Jamal lay in his new bed, the soft sheets unfamiliar but comforting. He stared at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts of the day. This was a new world, a new life, and while it was overwhelming, it was also filled with possibility. For the first time in a long time, Jamal fell asleep with a smile on his face, dreaming not of escape, but of all the things he could become. Outside, the neighbors watched in awe as the entourage escorted Jamal and Keanu to the waiting cars. As Jamal slid into the plush leather seat of the BMW, He couldn't help but feel like he had stepped into a dream. The soft hum of the engine, the scent of luxury, and the presence of someone who truly cared. It was all overwhelming. As the car pulled away from the only home he had ever known, Jamal looked back one last time. The crumbling building grew smaller in the distance, replaced by the promise of something new, something better. For the first time in his life, Jamal wasn't just surviving, he was starting to live. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, waking Jamal from the deepest sleep he had ever experienced. The bed beneath him felt like a cloud, a far cry from the rough mattress he had grown accustomed to. For a moment he lay still, wondering if the events of the past day had been nothing more than a vivid dream. But as his eyes adjusted to the light, the unfamiliar surroundings confirmed it was all real. He sat up slowly, looking around at the spacious room. The walls were painted in soft, calming tones, and shelves lined with books and toys he hadn't noticed the day before made the space feel welcoming. Jamal swung his legs over the side of the bed. И зрение его голые ноги погружаются в мягкий ковер. It was strange, this sense of comfort. He wasn't used to it yet. The scent of something delicious wafted through the air, prompting his stomach to rumble. Following the smell, Jamal padded out of his room and down the hallway to the open kitchen. Keanu stood there, dressed casually in a t-shirt and jeans, flipping pancakes on a griddle. The sight made Jamal stop in his tracks. He had seen Keanu Reeves as the untouchable movie star, the man in the black suit. Seeing him now, cooking breakfast, felt surreal. "Morning, Jamal," Keanu said, glancing over his shoulder with a warm smile. "Sleep okay?" Jamal nodded, still feeling a bit shy. "Yeah, the bed was really soft." Keanu laughed. "I'd hope so. Can't have you waking up with a sore back." "Hungry?" Jamal nodded again, his eyes fixed on the stack of pancakes growing on a plate beside the griddle. "Yeah, I guess." Keanu waved him over. "Well, come on then. You've got a big day ahead of you, and you'll need your energy." Jamal hesitated for a moment before walking over and sitting at the counter. Keanu placed a plate of pancakes in front of him, along with a small pitcher of syrup and a glass of orange juice. Jamal stared at the food, unsure of how to start. It wasn't just the quantity, it was the presentation, the care that had gone into making it. He picked up his fork and took a bite, the fluffy pancake melting in his mouth. "This is amazing," he said, his voice filled with genuine wonder. Keanu smiled, sitting across from him with his own plate. "Glad you like it. You're going to need your strength today." Jamal tilted his head, curiosity piqued. "What's happening today?" "Well," Keanu began, "today we're going to start setting things up for your new life. First, we'll get you some proper clothes. Then, we'll visit a school I think you'll like. After that, we'll stop by a few places where you can pick out things you'd like for your room. This is your home now, Jamal. I want it to feel like yours." Jamal blinked, his fork paused halfway to his mouth. "A school?" "Yep," Keanu said with a nod. "It's a good one. You'll have a chance to learn, make friends, and figure out what you want to do in the future." Jamal felt a pang of doubt. What if I'm not good enough? I've never really been to school. I don't even know if I can catch up." Keanu reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Jamal's. "You're more than good enough, Jamal, and you won't be doing it alone. We'll get you tutors if you need them, and I'll be here every step of the way. It's not about where you start, it's about where you're going." The boy nodded, a small smile forming. He didn't fully believe in himself yet, but Keanu's confidence in him was undeniable, and it made him want to try. After breakfast, they set out for the day. The first stop was a high-end clothing store. Jamal felt out of place among the racks of crisp shirts, tailored jackets, and polished shoes. But Keanu made it fun, joking about some of the more outlandish styles and encouraging Jamal to pick what he liked. By the end of the visit, Jamal had a wardrobe that fit him properly and made him feel confident. Next, they visited the school. The building was impressive, with large windows and well-kept grounds. Inside, they met with the principal, a kind woman who spoke to Jamal directly, asking about his interests and assuring him that the school was a place for learning and growth, not judgment. By the time they left, Jamal felt less nervous and more excited about the idea of starting classes. Their final stop was a home goods store, where Keanu encouraged Jamal to pick out items for his room. The boy chose posters of cars and bridges, a set of soft blankets in his favorite color, and a lamp shaped like a racing car. For the first time, he began to feel like this new life was truly his. As they returned to the penthouse that evening, Jamal felt a strange mix of exhaustion and fulfillment. The day had been overwhelming, but it had also been filled with moments of joy and connection. Keanu had treated him not just as a responsibility, but as someone worth knowing and investing in. That night, as Jamal settled into his bed, surrounded by the items he had chosen, he felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. The journey ahead was still daunting, but for the first time he believed it was one he could navigate, and he wouldn't be doing it alone. The days that followed were a whirlwind of firsts for Jamal. Each morning, he woke up to the soft warmth of his new bed, the hum of the city outside, a constant reminder that he was no longer confined to the broken-down neighborhood he had once called home. He still found it hard to believe that this life, this incredible shift from struggle to opportunity, was his reality. Keanu had made it clear that Jamal's adjustment wouldn't be rushed. "Take it one step at a time," he had said, a phrase Jamal found himself repeating whenever doubt crept in, and there was doubt. Small moments where Jamal questioned whether he truly belonged in this world of luxury and possibility. One morning, Keanu surprised Jamal with a visit to a private tutoring center. "I thought we could work on a few things before you start school," Keanu explained as they drove through the city. "No pressure, just a chance to get familiar with some of the subjects you'll be learning." Jamal nodded, clutching his seatbelt tightly. "What if I'm too far behind?" Keanu glanced at him with a calm smile. "You're not. You're smart, Jamal. Smarter than you realize. You've been learning all your life, just in ways a school might not measure. This is just a new kind of learning, and you'll be great." The tutoring center was bright and inviting, with colorful posters on the walls and shelves lined with books. A friendly tutor named Miss Andrews greeted Jamal warmly, crouching to his level to introduce herself. "Hi, Jamal. I'm here to help you figure out what you already know and what you'd like to learn more about. We'll go at your pace, okay?" Jamal nodded, his nerves slowly easing. The first session focused on math and reading. To Jamal's surprise, he wasn't as far behind as he had feared. Ms. Andrews praised his problem-solving skills, and by the end of the session, Jamal left with a spark of confidence he hadn't felt before. As the weeks passed, Jamal's world continued to expand. Keanu made it a point to involve him in everything, from casual conversations about current events to hands-on activities like cooking and even basic car maintenance. One afternoon, Keanu brought Jamal to a sprawling car showroom, where the boy's love for automobiles truly came alive. Jamal's eyes widened as they stepped into the space, the sleek lines and gleaming finishes of luxury cars surrounding him. "Wow," he breathed, unable to contain his excitement. Keanu grinned. "Thought you'd like this place. Go ahead, check them out." Jamal wandered from car to car, running his fingers lightly over their polished surfaces. A salesperson approached, clearly recognizing Keanu, but Keanu held up a hand. "This is Jamal's day. Let him take the lead." The salesperson smiled and turned to Jamal. "What's your favorite car here, young man?" Jamal hesitated, his gaze landing on a matte black sports car in the corner. "That one," he said, pointing. The salesperson nodded. "Excellent choice. Want to sit inside?" Jamal looked up at Keanu, who nodded encouragingly. With a cautious excitement, Jamal climbed into the driver's seat. The plush interior and intricate dashboard felt like something out of his dreams. He placed his hands on the steering wheel, imagining himself driving across one of the city's grand bridges. "You've got good taste," Keanu said, leaning against the car. "One day, you'll be driving something like this." Jamal laughed, though a part of him wanted to believe it. "Yeah, maybe, but I'll probably crash it." Keanu shook his head. "Not if you practice. And when the time comes, I'll make sure you're ready." Back at the penthouse, Keanu introduced Jamal to the idea of setting goals. They sat in the living room one evening, a notebook and pen in Jamal's hands. Think of something you want to achieve, Keanu said. Doesn't have to be big, just something that's important to you. Jamal thought for a moment before writing, his handwriting careful and deliberate. Learn how to read really well, he said, holding up the notebook. Keanu nodded, his expression proud. That's a great goal, and we'll make it happen. Together they listed smaller steps to reach that goal. Reading a little each day, practicing new words and asking questions whenever Jamal got stuck. It felt strange to Jamal, this idea of planning for the future. His life had always been about surviving the present, but now with Keanu's support, he began to see the value in looking ahead. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city, Jamal turned to Keanu. Why are you doing all this for me? Keanu looked thoughtful before answering. Because I see something special in you, Jamal. You've got courage, heart, and a mind that's hungry to learn, and because someone once helped me when I needed it most, it's my turn to pay it forward. Jamal stared out at the city lights, his heart full. For so long he had felt invisible, his dreams confined to the bridges where he had once watched the world go by. Now he was part of that world, learning to believe in himself and the possibilities that lay ahead. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. You're going to do amazing things, Jamal. I can feel it. And for the first time, Jamal allowed himself to believe it too. The transition into Jamal's new life wasn't without its challenges. While he was beginning to feel at home in the penthouse and enjoying the structured support Keanu provided, the outside world posed hurdles he hadn't anticipated. School was one of those hurdles. Despite the tutoring sessions and Keanu's constant encouragement, Jamal felt a knot of anxiety on his first day. The building was immaculate. Wait! If you're enjoying this empowering story, take a moment to comment "Empower." Share your thoughts and let us know what inspired you. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more amazing stories. The students well-dressed and the classrooms filled with resources he had never seen before. Everything about it screamed privilege, and Jamal couldn't help but feel out of place. Keanu had walked him to the front gate, crouching down to look him in the eyes. You've got this, Jamal. Just be yourself. You're here because you belong here, not because of me. Jamal nodded, gripping the straps of his new backpack tightly. What if they don't like me? Keanu smiled softly. You're not here to make everyone like you. You're here to learn, grow, and make the most of this opportunity. The right people will see how amazing you are. Jamal nodded, the words giving him a small boost of courage as he stepped through the gates. The day was a whirlwind of introductions, schedules, and new faces. Jamal did his best to keep up, but there were moments when he felt the weight of his differences. He overheard whispers from other students about his background, his clothes, and the way Keanu had walked him to school. Some were curious, others dismissive. It stung, but Jamal kept his head down and focused on the one thing he could control: his work. In class, Jamal quickly discovered that while he was behind in some subjects, he excelled in others. His math teacher, Mr. Ellison, was particularly impressed. You've got a natural knack for numbers, he said during their first session. Keep this up, and you'll be ahead of the class in no time. Jamal beamed at the praise, holding on to it as a small victory in a sea of uncertainty. Outside of school, Jamal's relationship with Keanu deepened. They spent evenings talking about everything from the day's challenges to Jamal's dreams for the future. Keanu shared stories from his own life, how he had struggled with loss, self-doubt, and the pressures of fame. Jamal was surprised to learn that even someone as accomplished as Keanu had faced hardships. You think I just woke up one day with everything figured out? Keanu had said with a chuckle. I've made mistakes. I've doubted myself. But you keep going. You learn, you grow, and you surround yourself with people who believe in you. Jamal nodded, those words becoming a mantra he would repeat to himself in tough moments. One weekend, Keanu surprised Jamal with a trip to a racetrack. You've been talking about cars non-stop, he said with a grin. Figured it's time we get you behind the wheel. Well, sort of. At the track, Jamal was introduced to a driving simulator, a high-tech setup that mimicked the experience of driving a real race car. At first, Jamal was hesitant, worried he'd embarrass himself. but Keanu stood by him, offering encouragement and guidance. "Take it slow," Keanu said. "Feel the controls. Trust yourself." Jamal nodded, gripping the simulator's steering wheel tightly. As he began, his movements were cautious and unsteady, but with each lap he grew more confident. By the end of the session, he was navigating the virtual track with ease, a huge smile plastered across his face. "That was amazing," Jamal exclaimed, stepping out of the simulator. "I felt like I was flying." Keanu laughed, ruffling Jamal's hair. "You've got the spirit of a racer, kid. We'll have to do this more often." The experience was more than just fun. It was a lesson in trusting himself, in pushing past fear to discover his potential. As weeks turned into months, Jamal began to find his rhythm. At school, he started making friends, other kids who admired his tenacity and sense of humor. He joined the school's math club and surprised even himself by enjoying it. At home, he continued to set goals with Keanu, working on everything from reading comprehension to learning about different cultures. But not every day was easy. There were moments when the weight of his past caught up with him, when he felt like an imposter in his new life, or struggled to let go of the survival instincts that had kept him alive for so long. During those times, Keanu was there, a steady presence who reminded Jamal of his worth. "You're not defined by where you came from," Keanu said one evening as they sat on the balcony. "You're defined by who you choose to be. And every day you're proving to yourself and to the world that you're capable of greatness." One pivotal moment came during a school assembly. The principal had invited Jamal to speak about overcoming challenges, knowing his story could inspire others. At first, Jamal was terrified. Public speaking was something he had never done before. "What if I mess up?" he asked Keanu the night before. "Then you mess up," Keanu said with a shrug. "But you get back up and keep going. Your story matters, Jamal. Share it, and you'll see just how powerful it can be." The next day, standing on the stage, Jamal took a deep breath and began to speak. He talked about his life before meeting Keanu, the struggles he had faced, and the hope that had carried him through. He shared how his life had changed, not just because of the opportunities he had been given, but because he had chosen to embrace them. When he finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Jamal looked out at the sea of faces, a mixture of pride and disbelief washing over him. For the first time, he realized that his story could make a difference. That evening, back at the penthouse, Jamal sat with Keanu, watching the city lights twinkle below. "I think I get it now," he said softly. "Get what?" Keanu asked, sipping his tea. "Why you believe in me? Why you keep saying I can do amazing things?" Maybe I can." Keanu smiled, his eyes warm with pride. "You can, Jamal. You already are." And for the first time, Jamal didn't just hear the words, he believed them. As Jamal's confidence grew, so did the opportunities for him to step outside his comfort zone. He was thriving in school, forming friendships, and exploring his interests with Keanu's unwavering support. Yet life had a way of testing people when they least expected it. Jamal was about to face one of the most defining challenges of his young life. It began on a cloudy Saturday afternoon. Keanu had planned a day trip to a community event in one of the city's less privileged neighborhoods, a place not unlike where Jamal had once lived. The event was meant to provide resources, food, and entertainment for families in need, and Keanu had been an enthusiastic supporter for years. "We'll help set up, meet some great people, and maybe you'll even find someone who reminds you of yourself," Keanu said as they drove through the city. Jamal nodded, his gaze fixed out the window. He hadn't been back to a neighborhood like his old one since leaving it behind. The thought made him uneasy, but he pushed it aside, trusting that Keanu wouldn't steer him wrong. When they arrived, the event was already in full swing. A stage had been set up for performances, tables were laden with food, and volunteers were handing out clothes and school supplies. The air buzzed with energy, laughter mingling with the upbeat music playing over the speakers. Jamal and Keanu got to work immediately, helping distribute meals and chatting with families. Jamal found himself drawn to a group of younger kids who were fascinated by his stories about cars and racing. Their wide-eyed excitement reminded him of his own curiosity when he used to watch cars speed across the bridges. "You're really going to be a racer someday?" one boy asked, his face alight with hope. Jamal grinned. "Maybe, but you know what? You could too. It's all about believing in yourself and working hard. The boy's smile widened, and Jamal felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that in inspiring these kids, he was also affirming his own dreams. As the day wound down, the sky darkened, and the first drops of rain began to fall. People hurried to pack up the event, but the sudden storm had made the streets slippery and dangerous. Keanu was helping load supplies into a truck when a commotion broke out near the edge of the park. Jamal turned to see a young girl, no older than 5, standing on the slippery embankment of a rain-swollen canal. She had wandered away from her family and was now frozen in place, the muddy ground beneath her feet threatening to give way. Panic gripped Jamal as he saw the girl teeter on the edge. Memories of the bridge incident with Keanu flashed through his mind. Without thinking, he sprinted toward her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Stay still," he called out, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I'm coming to get you." The rain poured harder, soaking him as he carefully navigated the slick embankment. Each step felt treacherous, but Jamal's determination outweighed his fear. The girl was crying now, her tiny hands reaching out for help. "You're gonna be okay," Jamal said, inching closer. "I've got you." When he was close enough, he extended his hand. "Take my hand. I won't let you fall." The girl hesitated, her small frame trembling, but Jamal's calm voice seemed to reassure her. Slowly, she reached out, and Jamal grasped her hand firmly. Using all his strength, he pulled her toward him, keeping his footing despite the slippery ground. Cheers erupted from the crowd as Jamal carried the girl back to safety. Her mother rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she hugged her daughter tightly. "Thank you," she said to Jamal, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you so much." Jamal nodded, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Keanu was by his side in an instant, a look of pride and concern on his face. "You okay?" Keanu asked, gripping Jamal's shoulder. "Yeah," Jamal replied, his voice shaking slightly. I couldn't let her fall." Keanu smiled, his eyes filled with admiration. "You've got a hero's heart, Jamal. You didn't even think twice." As the rain subsided and the crowd began to disperse, Jamal found himself reflecting on what had just happened. He had faced danger head-on, not because he was fearless, but because he knew what it felt like to be saved, and how much it mattered. In that moment, he realized that bravery wasn't about being unafraid. It was about acting despite the fear. That evening, back at the penthouse, Jamal sat on the couch with Keanu, recounting the day's events. Keanu listened intently, a proud smile on his face. "You know," Keanu said, "it's one thing to talk about courage. It's another to live it. Today, you showed everyone, yourself included, just how strong and capable you are." Jamal looked down at his hands, which still felt the weight of the girl's small hand in his. "I was scared," he admitted, "but I didn't want her to get hurt. I had to do something." "And that's what makes you a hero," Keanu said. "It's not about being fearless. It's about caring enough to act." Jamal nodded, a sense of pride and fulfillment washing over him. He had always admired heroes, those who stood up, took risks, and made a difference. Today, he had become one. As he lay in bed that night, the events of the day replaying in his mind, Jamal felt a shift within himself. This wasn't just about adapting to a new life anymore. It was about becoming someone who could use that life to help others, just as Keanu had helped him. For the first time, Jamal didn't just see himself as the boy who had survived against all odds. He saw himself as someone who could thrive and inspire others to do the same. The weeks after the rescue at the community event brought a new wave of attention to Jamal. News of his bravery spread quickly, with local papers and online outlets highlighting the story of the young boy who had risked his life to save another. While Jamal felt overwhelmed by the spotlight, Keanu stood by him, helping him navigate the sudden fame with humility and grace. "You didn't do it for recognition," Keanu reminded him during one of their evening talks on the balcony. "You did it because it was the right thing to do. That's what makes you special." The words resonated deeply with Jamal. For the first time, he began to see how his actions, both big and small, could ripple out and affect others in profound ways. The experience ignited something within him, a desire to give back, and to use his journey as a way to inspire others. One evening, Keanu surprised Jamal with a proposal. How would you feel about starting something of your own? A project to help kids like you, kids who dream big but don't always have the resources to make those dreams a reality? Jamal tilted his head, intrigued but uncertain. What do you mean? Like a club or something? Bigger, Keanu said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. We could start a foundation. You'd be the face of it, Jamal. A way to share your story and help kids in need, whether it's through education, mentorship, or just giving them a place to feel safe. The idea was daunting, but the more Jamal thought about it, the more it made sense. He had been given a second chance, a path out of hardship, and he wanted others to have the same opportunity. With Keanu's support, Jamal began brainstorming ideas for what the foundation could do. I want to focus on kids who feel invisible, Jamal said one evening as they worked on the project. Kids like I used to be. I want them to know that their dreams matter. Keanu smiled, his pride in Jamal evident. Then that's what we'll do. The foundation, named Bridges of Hope in honor of Jamal's love for bridges and the pivotal role they had played in his life, launched with great fanfare. The first event was held at the very bridge where Jamal had saved Keanu months earlier. Families from all over the city attended, drawn by the promise of free school supplies, mentorship programs, and workshops designed to help kids discover their passions. Jamal stood nervously on the stage, clutching the microphone as he looked out at the crowd. His heart pounded, but when he caught sight of Keanu standing off to the side, giving him an encouraging nod, he took a deep breath and began to speak. Thank you all for being here, he started, his voice steady despite the nerves. When I was younger, bridges were my escape. They were a place where I could dream about a better life. But for a long time, that's all they were. Dreams. Then one day, something happened that changed everything. Someone believed in me. And now I'm here to tell you that I believe in you. The crowd erupted into applause, and Jamal felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This wasn't just about his story anymore. It was about creating opportunities for others to write their own. As Bridges of Hope grew, so did Jamal's confidence and sense of purpose. He became a role model not only for the kids in his program, but for people across the city who saw his journey as a testament to the power of resilience and kindness. Schools invited him to speak, organizations reached out to collaborate, and families from all walks of life found inspiration in his story. Despite the success, Jamal remained grounded, thanks in large part to Keanu's guidance. Never forget where you came from, Keanu often reminded him. It's what makes you who you are. Jamal took those words to heart, often returning to his old neighborhood to visit the friends and neighbors who had supported him in his toughest times. He made sure they knew they hadn't been forgotten and that Bridges of Hope was as much for them as it was for anyone else. One evening, after a particularly successful event, Jamal and Keanu sat on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. Jamal had grown taller and more confident, his once nervous demeanor replaced by a quiet strength. Did you ever think we'd end up here? Jamal asked, glancing at Keanu. Keanu chuckled, taking a sip of his tea. Not exactly, but I always believed in you, Jamal. From the moment you pulled me back from that bridge, I knew you were destined for something extraordinary. Jamal smiled, his heart full of gratitude. I wouldn't have made it without you. Keanu shook his head. You did the hard part. I just gave you the tools. The rest was all you. As they sat in comfortable silence, Jamal thought about how far he had come. From the boy who roamed bridges, dreaming of luxury cars, to the young man who now had a purpose bigger than himself. His journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge had shaped him into who he was. The city stretched out before them, a sea of lights and endless possibilities. For Jamal, it wasn't just a view. It was a reminder that the world was full of bridges waiting to be crossed, each one leading to something greater. And he was ready to build them, not just for himself, but for everyone who needed a path forward. Wait! If you're enjoying this empowering story, take a moment to comment "Empower." Share your thoughts and let us know what inspired you. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more amazing stories.